everybody here is a part of this story. So many of you contributed a piece of the puzzle to make this miracle happen. Drew would not be here today, really, if it weren't for all those puzzle pieces coming together. So here's how the next hour is going to go. I'm going to tell a story or two, and then I'm going to hand it over to Drew. And when he's finished talking about what he wants to talk about, we're going to open it up to a Q&A if anybody wants to ask questions. And we're also going to invite anybody in the audience, if you have something you want to share, we'll let you come on up and share it. This will be an open forum. So I'm going to give you a little recap of what happened, okay? The story began in November of 2021 when Drew and I were we were driving across country, and we both caught COVID. We came home, and we got sicker and sicker, but Drew got really sick. And we made one really bad mistake, and that was waiting too long to get him medical care. By the time I got him into urgent care, his lungs were so wrecked, they sent us straight to Mission Hospital, where I dropped him off at the ER, and I wasn't able to even touch him for weeks after that. So the next 7 or 10 days were a little up and down, but he got worse. He popped a hole in his lung, and it got to a point where he was just struggling to breathe, even with oxygen at almost the highest amount you could get. So on Thanksgiving Day, my sister-in-law, who had come here to support me for a month during this ordeal, Andrea and I drove to the hospital, and at that point, we were visiting Drew through a window because we weren't allowed in to see him. And so we would stand outside the window, standing in the bushes, and staring at him through the window and talking to him on speakerphone. And so that particular day, we got there, and the doctors were in with him and joined in on the conversation on the speakerphone, and the very difficult decision was made to put him on a ventilator. And now you all know what that means. Most people that go on a ventilator with COVID don't make it. So we knew the grim reality, but there weren't really many options. So as I stood in those bushes and stared through the window, I patched Drew's mom in on FaceTime and held the phone up to the window. And then I patched in our son Dylan, who was 20 at the time. And for the first time in 25 years of being with this man, I saw him cry as he said goodbye to his family, not knowing what the future held. And then the doctor said, it's time, and we had to get off the phone. And so I'm holding the phone, and I'm like, well, I guess we got to hang up. And Drew said, no, you hang up. Do you remember this? And I said, no, you hang up. He said, no, you hang up. And then I thought, okay, he's in a weakened state. I'll give in on this time.
The last thing I said was, I got this.
He did. He said, I got this. So the drive home with my sister-in-law, Andrea, we were shell-shocked. And we weren't talking much. And I found myself planning his funeral in my mind. And I thought, should we do it in San Clemente, where all our friends are? And then I thought, should we do it in Myrtle Beach, where his family is? And then something unbelievable and miraculous happened. It was like a lightning bolt from heaven that hit me so hard, and I literally heard the words, and the words were this: if you want him to live, you have to plan for him to come home. And I got that message loud and clear, and I never again thought about his funeral. And I turned to my sister-in-law, Andrea, and I said, Andrea, I just made a decision that I'm going to have unwavering faith that Drew's going to come home. And I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I'm going to do it. And then I realized that my job was to also get all of you involved in that faith. And I found myself communicating to the world, asking people, envision Drew, surfing again, envision him, painting, envision him coming home. And many of you did that. Many of you did that for us. There's a funny thing, about faith. Like, I never knew what faith was. I'm not a religious person. But I found a quote the other day that describes it so perfectly, and it goes like this: hoping is praying for rain, but faith is bringing an umbrella. So there's a few things you can do when you have somebody you love that's in critical condition. You do have a little control. And I'm actually writing a book, and in the book it's going to tell you all the things that I learned. But right now, I'm just going to tell you two. Sorry. Okay, number one, question everything. You have to be a fierce advocate, because while the doctors and nurses and all the medical people are doing the best they can with what they've got, they're human and they make mistakes and they're overloaded with work. And I found that I had to be at that hospital every day. I had to stop working for 6 months. And I had to be there every single day and pay attention to everything. And I had to learn things that I never knew. So that's number one. Number two, and this is the biggie: never accept a prognosis that you don't want. So if they tell you you're going to die and you don't want to die, don't believe them. If they tell you you'll never get off the vent and you want to get off that vent, don't believe them. And when they told us that he'd never get off the oxygen, we chose not to believe. Now, we knew that all these things were an absolute reality. We're not stupid. We knew that. But here's the thing. If you believe in the outcome that you want to have, then you're going to do every single thing it takes to get that outcome. And it's effing hard. So it's a lot easier sometimes just to say, okay, I'm done. Okay, so the one story I'm going to tell, I call it the Kim and Frank story. This is Kim. She's going to make me cry. Christine has tissues if you want to pass them over to her. Okay, so the Kim and Frank story. I'll first tell you a little bit about Kim. Good friend, family to us. She's a hands-on healer. She's works with athletes, and she's been Drew's healer for 20 years. When she found out Drew was intubated and put in a coma, she started going to that hospital and doing treatments on him. She was the one that taught me what drop foot is because Drew was getting drop foot. Kim said, not on my watch. So one day, Kim was scheduled to come and do a treatment on Drew. Drew was about 3 weeks in a coma at this point, intubated on the ventilator. And there was a new nurse that day. His name was Frank, and I really wish he was here tonight because he's one of our angels. He couldn't make it. He's busy saving lives. Frank walked in, and he looked at Drew, and at this point, Drew had lost almost 100 pounds. He was completely atrophied. He looked like he was about 100 years old, and he had been laying in that bed for weeks. And Frank was visibly agitated over this. And I remember him going, why has nobody gotten this man out of this bed? And he said, I want to get him out of this bed. And I'm like, how do you get an intubated patient out of a bed? You got to imagine, they've got this tube down their throat. They've got just wires and things all over. And Frank said, well, there's a harness in this room. And as luck would have it, we had the only room on that ICU floor that had a harness where you could move an intubated patient from a bed to a chair. And Frank is the only nurse that knew how to do it with someone that was that risky of a patient. And this was a risky operation. So I said no. Because here I knew that every decision I made was either going to bring him closer to death or closer to recovery. And I thought that it was too risky. So I said no. And then Kim showed up to do her treatment. I left and went home. I get a phone call 2 hours later from Kim, and she said, Maria, Frank wants to move Drew out of the bed. And I said, oh no, Kim, it's too risky. No, I can't do that. Later, Kim explained to me that this was a big thing. That she had prayed before she called me, and she said, what do I do? She asked for guidance. Do I push or do I lean back? And the message that was given to her was, it's go time. So on that phone call, Kim risked our friendship because that's what a true friend does. Kim loved Drew enough to fight me on this. And she said, Maria, this has to happen. So, in life, there are these sliding door moments. You know what that is? It's when you get a small window of opportunity for something important to happen. And as that door slides, if you don't jump in there, you miss it. Well, this was one of those moments. But I trusted Kim, so I changed my mind and I said, okay, but on one condition, and that is that you be there when it happens. And so Kim, God bless her soul, she was already home with her kids. She got back in her car and drove back to that hospital. And the reason this was such an important moment is because that was the day that something shifted in Drew's spirit, and we saw it in his eyes. That was the day he went from dying to recovering. So thank you, Kim, for pushing me. Because I don't know that we'd be here without that. Okay, the last thing I want to say, sorry, I just I don't want to forget anything. And so the last thing, all right, I'm just going to wing it. The last thing I want to say is I do want to mention a couple people, and before I do that, I want to say we had a good 50 people that were, maybe more, that did so much for us, were so generous to us. Almost everybody here did, supported us in many, many, many ways. And I think one of the most important things really was propping me up so I was strong enough to go in there every day and be strong for Drew. But there are just a couple people I want to name because they were there all along, and so I do have to look at my notes because I don't want to forget. Hold on. Help me out here. Hold that. I got too many pieces of paper here. I need to go back to Toastmasters. Okay, here we go. All right. So, well, first of all, even though she's not here, I'm going to mention my sister-in-law, Andrea, because she was my rock for an entire month. And the first month that this was happening, she got on a plane and flew out here the very next day after Drew went into the hospital and left her family to be here for us. My son Dylan, who then came out and relieved her, and he stayed here for 3 months, and he helped me make critical medical decisions. And then a team of people who really we would have lost our business. It's a miracle we didn't lose our business. But part of that miracle was Christine O'Donnell. And not only that did she run the business, but she prayed with me almost every day. And she watched Sex and the City with me at night because I had to frickin' laugh. And that was what I did every night, and that was how I survived this. And then Corey Pons, that's Corey over there. We call him the hippie. Corey works with us, and Thanksgiving Day, I called him and told him what was happening, and he said, "Do you want me to come out there?" And I said, No, you don't. He was living in Denver, and I'm like, "No," and he goes, "I'm buying a ticket, I'm coming out." And sure enough, he came out, and just an act of kindness. And Phil Roberts, who's also here, I don't know, where are you, Phil? I can't see. There you are, right there. Sorry. Phil Roberts helped with the business, did so many things for us. And then I also want to mention, this is the last thing I want to say, okay? And this is Dr. Tyler Johnson. Can you raise your hand? Okay. So, Dr. Tyler Johnson, whom I didn't really know, other than Drew had gone to him for some chiropractor appointments previously. After Drew came home from the hospital, he started texting me saying, "Hey, this is Tyler Johnson. Can I come by and give Drew a treatment?" And I said, sure, when Drew was ready. And so he started coming to the house because Drew was too weak to go anywhere, and Drew was in a lot of back pain. Well, after many, many visits, I looked at Tyler and I said, "Well, thank you for coming to our house. Can you give me a bill? I'd like to pay you." And he said, "No, I'm not taking payment from you." And I said, "Why? Why are you doing this for us?" And he said, "For 20 years, I've been hearing stories about Drew Brophy and all the good things he does for people in the community. And I wanted to pay it back because this is the kind of community I want to live in. And this is a community, this is what we live in, and all of you, and so many of you, I'm sorry I couldn't, if I said all of your names, and you all know who you are, who contributed so much, but we would be here all night, so you know we love you and appreciate everything that you've done. And now I'm going to hand it over to Drew.
I need more whiskey from you.
We'll get to your whiskey. But really, you guys, so much love for, I can't express in words. I really can't.
I love you. I'm going to have to set this mic down. Thank you, Craig. Man. I hope everybody, guys, there's seats here too if you want to sit down. I'm a bit overwhelmed, actually. I've been planning this day since the beginning to get through this. And I would say that this moment officially closes the door of this chapter of my life. Yeah. But really what I wanted to express to everyone, that this wasn't just my journey. This was our journey. Everybody played a part. I think I drew the short stick because I got the hardest part. But we all played a part. We all shared in this experience. We shared in this miracle. And what I want to convey to everyone is that it's all mind. Your mind is controlling everything. I thought about everything that I wanted to say and all the people I wanted to thank. But when it came down to it, what I really wanted to share with everybody is what I saw when they put me in that coma and I left my body. So people might doubt it. They might think it's crazy. But it was real. It was more real than this. I realize now, I'm not from here going there. I'm from there coming here. And they sent me back. It's a crazy thing when the doctor tells you that you're probably going to die. He told me in those matter-of-fact words, he said it was going to go 3 ways and none of them were good. He said I had a chance, but a very slim chance. He wanted me to go on that ventilator and I did not want to go. I wanted to fight, and I did. I fought. And after fighting for one night, I realized I was going to lose if I decided to fight. So I had faith, and I surrendered. I accepted the fact that if God wanted to take me, I was okay with that. But I was going to try to fight and stay. It was brutal. I'm a witness to all the people who did not make it. I'm one of those people that had to say goodbye to my family through a window. People that you heard about. I know what it was like. I know the way Nurse Ari looked at me and patted me on the back, knowing the inevitable. I could see it in her face. I could see it in the doctor's face. I watched my family disappear as they gassed me. And I told my wife, I got this. What happened next is extraordinary. It is what got me through all of this. You instantly realize you're not the body when you leave. It's like a release. It felt good. It was amazing. In that same moment, I felt like I was expanding exponentially. like I was remembering. It was beautiful. It felt like I was losing myself, like whatever was me was disappearing. But I realized that now that that's not what it was. I was gaining everything else, everyone else. It's almost as if I was everyone and everything. It's almost hard to articulate. In that time, I just felt myself vanishing. And at some point, I felt this enormous hug or sense of love and compassion. My instant thought was it was my father. But it was more than that. It was like all my ancestors. It was like all of you holding me like I was a child. I described before, it felt like a billion children tickling me. And you just surrender to it. At some point, this other force came. It was strong. I was like in this river of energy and light. Everything was light. I was light. This light hit me like a truck, like all of us, like the flow of energy. Like I said, I'm not getting it right, but it's the best I can do to try to describe what it was like. It was a feeling. There was no words. That energy was like a guardian angel, like a warrior. It was me too. I kind of feel like it was all of you firing me up. And at some point, it said, you got to go back. I'd forgotten all about this place. I forgot about Maria and Dylan. It was like I forgot an appointment or something. I was like, oh my gosh, where are they? I don't know where that place is. I was devastated. The thought was, we'll get you back. You have to go back. The exact thought was, there's no time to start over. It's almost like the whole thing was apologizing to me for what I was about to go through. We're sorry we had to do this to you, but we had to do it this way because it was like an expedited lesson plan. They wanted me to know something. I just gently floated down. And I was like, okay, I'm ready. I'll go back. I didn't fight it. The last second, it felt like I was being squeezed into a trash compactor or like into a bottle or something. It was nuts. It sucked. I don't remember waking up. But when I did, I was just like, oh my gosh, not this shit again. Like, oh my God. I didn't realize I was paralyzed. I couldn't understand what anybody was saying. I couldn't talk. I was locked in my body. Everybody had masks and face shields, full hazmat suits, plastic and stuff on the walls. There's Mr. Fitzgibbons. Welcome.
Dr. Fitzgibbons.
Yeah, doctor. You can have a seat up front if you want.
Come on up here.
Welcome. Thank you for coming. Thank you for coming. This man helped Maria immensely. To all of you that helped Maria while I was in the coma, I am forever grateful. She needed it. She kind of had it worse than I did. When I woke up, I just had this incredible experience. I couldn't tell anybody because I couldn't talk. Nothing made sense. It felt like I was gone for 1,000 years. I almost didn't realize where I was. It wasn't until I saw my wife. And my wife would come in smiling and happy. I don't know how she did it. I was like, I don't know how I'm going to get out of this one. But they told me I was going to be okay. So I believed it. I remember when Frank and Kim got me on the lift, I thought I was flying. They had me hanging up. I was a bag of bones. I can remember getting vertigo. It was crazy. I had no control. God, that was so hard. Man. All this seemed like it lasts forever. Another important person was Paul. Paul would stay after hours. He was another respiratory therapist, friend of ours and collector. He would sit and pray over me at night. I couldn't talk to him. I couldn't talk to anybody. But I knew everybody was there. My mind was clear. I was in 3 different hospitals. There was amazing people at every one. And there was like terrible nights. There was people dying around me. It was hard to stay positive. But I kept saying to myself, I am the light. I knew it. I'd had this experience. I want you all to know, when I was locked in my body, I could feel your hopes and prayers. It's almost like I could see it, the energy flowing into me. All my other senses were turned off. It's all I had. I want you to know that your thoughts and your prayers mean something. It's all mind. You have to control it, direct it. Don't let despair and anger and all these things get in your mind. It does you no use. The only thing you can control is your own mind. Use it. Don't let it fight you. I knew this in this situation. It was absolutely brutal, yet I endured. When they finally released me from the first hospital, which was Mission, they sent me to Kindred in Santa Ana. The first night at Kindred was one of the hardest nights of my life. The transport is super difficult when you're on life support. You feel like you're going to die on the process. Every moment, I don't even know how long it was, but I was like this close to death for I don't even know how long. I could hear everything everybody was saying. I could hear them saying, you know what, we need extra rooms. And, who's going to, this guy, I don't think he's going to be here much longer. The very first night I went into Mission, I heard somebody comment after seeing my CAT scan, like, oh man, this is really bad. It doesn't look good for this guy. I got the curse of super good hearing. I can hear all the way down to the nurse's station. I could hear them all, him again, he's beeping my thing. Oh, geez. I think I was a terrible patient. I gave some of my nurses hell. Some of them didn't even want to look at me. It's a hard thing for these nurses and doctors. They got thrown into a war zone. Talk about a hopeless situation. I had deep compassion for them. I knew how overwhelming the odds were for them. Some of the nurses could hack it, some could not. Some would look at you, some would not. I was there when nurses quit. I don't know how they do it every day. To all of you, you're amazing. I had no idea before I'd been in that hospital what you have to go through. And you're tremendous human beings. filled with compassion for these hopeless situations. At Kindred, I survived that first night. The changeover is really tough. I can't remember everybody's name, but I remember all my nurses' faces. And I was told I would probably never get off that ventilator, but that's what Kindred specializes in. Isn't that right, Alicia? Alicia there was my angel. She believed in me. Anytime I saw her face, I knew that it was going to be a good day. I won't mention the nurses that came in where I knew it was going to be a bad day, but there was a few. But their mission was to get me off the vent. I was still paralyzed, but I could move my arm. And I could start to write. I couldn't see what I was writing, but I was trying. Being on the ventilator is like drowning. You can't breathe. You can't feel yourself breathing. It's important for nurses and doctors to know this. It's unnatural. Your heart doesn't recognize that you're breathing, so it panics. Your heart rate skyrockets. It's like you're running a marathon, yet I can't move. It was the weirdest predicament. All I had was my mind, trying to keep calm. And we got through it. He titrated that oxygen down on the ventilator, and it took a long time. I don't know, a month or more. My doctors were kind of not wanting to do it. They wanted to play it safe. I had a trach in my neck. I don't want you to feel bad about all this stuff, and it was just describing it. But as they titrated that oxygen down, it got harder and harder and harder. Alicia was there every step of the way. I don't know how we got through it. He always smiled. I don't know if I was a good patient or a bad patient, but I was trying my best. At this time, I had people visiting. I had this one come in and sing for me.
Which I don't sing. It was not part of my plan.
She did that at Mission when I was totally paralyzed and couldn't talk. The whole ICU ward could hear she played the singing bowls and be singing. I think it was therapy for everyone. Like I said, it took all of us. We all shared in this journey. Eventually, we were going to get off the vent. And I just want to tell you this story because it's important. In order to beat the vent, you have to breathe 3 days on your own without it. I don't know how long the record is, but 70 days on the vent, one doctor was saying, you're probably going to be on this ventilator the rest of your life and be in a nursing home. That was pretty shocking news. But that wasn't as bad as you're dying, or they were going to give me a lung transplant. So, I was like, I can beat this too. The first time we tried, I failed. I could only do like half a day. So they take it off and they put oxygen in your nose and you have to breathe. I still got the trach in. Breathing through the trach's like breathing through a straw, a bar straw. And your lungs don't work. My diaphragm's paralyzed, so I had to do this terrible jerking motion. I wish Kalen Brown was here. He used to make fun of me. He would be like, you got to quit wiggling like that. And I'm like, it's the only way I can breathe. We tried it, I think, a day later. I did a whole day. And Alicia said she had to go home for the day. I was terrified. That's when Danton took over. I begged to be put back on that ventilator. I couldn't do it. And Dan said, no, I'm not going to do it. You can do this. I got you. It felt like I was going to die. And this man said, I'm going to hold your hand. I'm going to stand here all night. You got this. Well, I did this stupid jerking motion, and somehow I fell asleep. When I opened my eyes the next morning, he was still there. He let go of my hand and left the room. That gave me the motivation to go the third night. And I beat that damn ventilator. I tell this story because all of us are going to find ourselves in some type of predicament. The time to have the strength is not in that moment. You got to have that now. You got to become that person now. Not just for yourself, but for each other. What we did here, everybody played their part. And all our parts are going to change next time. It's going to be somebody else. So it's important that we do it now. Be strong now. Control your mind now. All of these things. Recognize what we did here. After I beat the ventilator, I was left 7 days on that trach. Dr. Coley didn't want to take it out. I had to breathe through that bar straw for 7 days. And man came in there early one morning and was 7 days later like, oh my God, what am I doing to this poor man? He was convinced I was going to have to go back on it. He didn't believe that I was going to do it and stay off it. They pulled that thing out of my throat. I thought it was this little thing. It was this giant thing. And instantly as he pulled that thing out, I took my first breath and went, oh my God. That's the real day I started doing better. I started doing physical therapy, started being able to, move some things. My poor son was moving my legs. Tan and Ashley would come and move my legs when I couldn't. Every night. All day long, these people, between Maria and whoever came to visit, were moving my limbs when I couldn't to try to wake them up. You can't imagine. It seemed hopeless that I would ever walk again. But it happened. I see Josh back there. Josh came to visit me. I was scared that I wasn't going to walk again. I needed you, man. I wanted to know what it was going to be like. I'm forever grateful. But we beat it with the help of all of y'all. I left Kindred and went to the Encompass, the physical therapist place. The lady Carol came to check to see if I was able. I didn't qualify because I was a double assist person. It wasn't good enough. She took my case to them. And y'all had to vote on it. Isn't that right, Oliver? He voted for me. Whether to take me or not. They wanted me. They wanted the challenge. I showed up there and I was able to take my first shower in 4 months. It was the first time I saw my broken body in a mirror. I was like, oh my God. I was a skeleton. I went from 210 to like 105. I think at that time I was about 125. Prior to that, I hadn't had a drink of water or a bite of food in 3.5 months. You can't imagine not having a sip of water. You talk about being grateful for things. Be grateful for everything. That's why this thing is so amazing. I sip water or whiskey now like, oh my gosh. This is the best thing I ever had. Every little thing. Even if something gets taken away from you, the things you still have, be grateful. At that Encompass, I couldn't walk. I couldn't sit up. They got me to do it. I'll ever remember the first day you put me on the side of the bed and you told me to lean forward. I was like, I can't do it, man. I had no strength. I had no muscle. I had no balance. He sat in front of me and says, lean forward and stand. I got you. I'll catch you. I trusted. I surrendered. I did it. I stood up for the first time. There's Kaylin Brown right there. Kaylin was there for me every morning, checking on me. Man, it's good to see you, bro. This is amazing for me. I thank you so much all for being here. When I stood for that first time, I was like, oh my gosh, I think I can do this. And you guys did a miraculous thing. I don't know how you did it. It wasn't that long. It was like 2 weeks. They had me putting around the hallway.
Look at me.
I'm almost as big as you.
I'm working too much.
You can imagine. I was like... But they worked with me and they got me walking. And all I wanted to do was go home that whole time. Being in those hospitals is like being in prison. On that trip from Kindred to Encompass, I saw the sun for the first time. I cried. I was like, oh my God, I have not seen the sun. You're looking at a guy that surfs every day and watches the sunset every day. I'm so connected to it. In that moment, I saw that sun. I was like, oh my gosh, that's me. I'm the energy. It invigorated me. My goal was to be home on my birthday, which was March 8th. I had that goal back when Alicia was working with me. I was not ready to go home, but Encompass released me. Oliver taught me how to get up off the floor because he knew I was going to fall. And I did. As soon as I went through my doorway, I crashed. And I was like, man, this is going to be a lot harder than I think. This story is, I tell it because when you find yourself in this situation or somebody else, do exactly what you did for me. It worked. All of you. I am forever grateful. I had a physical therapist, Nicole, who worked with me. She's the one that got me off oxygen. My doctor said I'd probably never be off oxygen. I'd be on it for the rest of my life. I can't surf with oxygen. So I was like, oh, this is going to be a problem. All of you in town, you watched me with Nicole going up and down these streets. I was skin and bones. You guys gave me clothes because none of my clothes fit me. I had an oxygen tank going up and down these things. It was so embarrassing. It was so humbling. But I did it. Eventually, I made it down to the beach. Nicole would take my oxygen away from me, make me walk up that damn hill. I would be huffing and puffing. She's like, you got to do it. I was like, man, this sucks. I can't tell you how many times I cried. I was just like, man, is this ever going to be over? It seemed like it would last forever, but it's over. It didn't last forever. So if you find yourself in this situation, realize this will not last. It's just temporary. All the people brought me and Maria food, helped us, came to visit us, boosted our spirits. My family would come to visit. They would take turns. This is the type of community we want to live in. The surf community, my friends, they raised money for us. We would have lost everything. The bills for 4.5 months in the hospital were astronomical, in the multi-millions of dollars. The out-of-pocket coming home was in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. I can't believe that so many people cared. But this brings up another topic, that everything comes back to you. I've tried to live my life in a way where I was giving and I was always trying to be the best I could be. And sometimes I would like, oh man, I'm getting the short end of the stick. But I always thought it's going to come back around. And boy, did it. It came when I needed it. So it's another thing to think about living your life. You get back what you give. So live that way. I don't want to talk forever, so I'm almost done. Maria's timing me. But I want to end it on this note. My other goal was to wrap this up and be able to surf again. The day I surfed was the day I really knew I was going to get better. It was an achievement. I went out thinking I was just going to catch a wave on my stomach because I just wanted to be with my friends. I could not lift my arms up over like this. I could barely move. My feet were still numb, so it felt like glass I was walking on. This one again paddled out with me. It was a glorious day. It was only about this big. It's on video. But it felt so good just to be in the water. I cried again. I was like, oh my God, finally, I'm back. A little wave came and I just thought I was going to belly it in. You should have seen, I had my big wave life vest on. It barely fit me. I'm skin and bones. And I had to wear it because if I fell off the board, I would have drowned because I couldn't swim. Hey, watch it, pal. But, you know, it was super humbling to be out there in this condition, but I wanted to go. This wave came, and I paddled just to think that I was going to belly it in because I'd been practicing with Nicole in the backyard to jump up, and I couldn't do it. So I was like, man, I'm just going to belly. Caught this wave, and I just popped up. I couldn't believe it. I was like, oh, shit, I'm up. I just rode the wave. I rode it all the way to the shore. It was glorious. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to be okay. I think I caught 3 more waves. So that started. And my goal was to be able to surf better and better. My friend Matt Biolis over here gave me a board to ride. It was his board. It's a little thick, but it did the job. Every day. Yes. Yeah, I didn't know how bad other people had it. I'd never been weak before. And so like all of a sudden I was putting this weak body. I was like, oh man, this is terrible. But my goal was to surf real waves because that's what I like. And I'm happy to report, to wrap this up, that just last week I was in Fiji surfing a wave called Cloud Break. It's a mile out in the ocean, and it's a big reef break, a long ride over really shallow reef. And I surfed every day. I surfed 9 hours one day. I got stand-up barrels, and I had a great time. And most importantly, I was there with my wife. It was our 23-year wedding anniversary. She deserved a break. And that was the celebration of all of this. And I wanted to share that with you. And all the people that aren't here, because I know we're recording this, everybody who prayed for us, everybody that just had a thought for us, everybody who donated money to us, the collectors that bought art from us, did not let us go out of business, did not let us lose our house, did not let us give up. Christine and Corey that, kept the ship going, steering the ship without us. We're here at the gallery. I can't believe it. So with that, I just want to say I am forever grateful to you all. And let's control our minds and create a world worth living in and be there for each other. All right. That's it. All right. Sorry I talked too long.
Oh, you did great.
That was on the money. And I don't know if anybody